7:30 Central Time. Welcome to Cloud Talk Live, everyone. Well, everybody, welcome to a Thursday edition of Cloud Talk Live. My name is Jeff DeVerter, Chief Technology Evangelist, and your host here at Cloud Talk Live. So glad, hopefully, you're joining in today. You know, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. If you're new around here, if you normally turn on the LinkedIn's middle of the day and not in the morning when we normally go live, you're thinking, who's this guy? What are the rules here? Well, I'd love for you to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us where you are in the comments down below on whatever platform you happen to be watching us on, and I'll find the right buttons here in a minute. And I'd love for you to introduce yourself, because these conversations are intended to be just that. Conversations that we have not just with each other that are going to be on the program, but with you, the audience. And so it's much easier when we know who you are and where in the world you are, because this is a global audience. Gert is in from Houston. Gert, I was just talking about you the other day. We miss you around here, Gert. Ex-racker, but once a racker, always a racker. Folks, if you want to get a hold of us, send us an email at solve@rackspace.com. The whole team gets it. The whole team will hopefully respond. At least someone will. And it's going to be a fun conversation here today. But before we get to that, I've got a couple of orders of business that I want to cover with you. The first is coming up on May. Oh, if we're not 3 orders of business, if we're not already best friends, that's how you do it right there. Jeff DeVerter. Jay DeVerter over on LinkedIn. I'd love for you to connect with me there. Helps us continue to have conversations about interesting things. I had a great person reach out, and boy, she has some ideas about some guests. You're going to enjoy those in the future. Now, also, all of this content shows up in the podcast feed. So go to wherever you find podcasts and subscribe to Cloud Talk. We'd love for you to do that. Vipul from India is here. Evie Leo. I can always count on Evie showing up for the show. Great to see you here, Evie. Now, coming up on May 7th, 10 a.m. Central Time, is the 2024 Global AI Impact Report. We have an amazing session scheduled for you. It is our 1-hour Solve Summit. This is going to be a great show. We have got the CTO and President of Technology and Sustainability, Srini Kaushik's going to be there. We got executives from AWS. We've got Reagan. If you watch the AI and You episodes, Reagan Avon is going to be here. It's going to be a great conversation. So mark your calendars. If you haven't already gotten an invite in LinkedIn, well, consider yourself personally invited. In fact, I bet you we can put an invite, or at least a link to be a part of that event in the chat. Can't we, Megan or Daniel? So I'd love for you to do that. Now also, oh, look at that. You guys are so good. The best team around here. All right. Also, we're doing things a little bit different here today. Normally, we're going to rock right into the conversation. But before we do that, you know, Rackspace really goes out of our way to help share information with you guys that'll help make your day a little bit better and a little bit smarter. And here to talk about some of the content that we have coming up is Alexis. And so why don't we get Alexis up here on the screen, and she's going to tell us about, well, one of my favorite things in the world, 2 of my favorite things, coffee and talking. So, Alexis, what's going on?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you for having me. So our Coffee Talk webinar series is all about listening to our subject matter experts speak on various tech topics over virtual coffee. So no 50 slide PowerPoints here. Our next episode is on May 16th at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. Our brewmasters for this episode are Michael Levy, Director of Product Management, Programmatic Infrastructure, and Deepak Piswani, Senior Director of Product Management, Networking, and Security. They will be deep diving into the art of safeguarding your business against unforeseen challenges, how to achieve business continuity, and ensure your organization stays resilient through any storm. There will also be a Q&A at the end of the session so that you can ask Michael and Deepak all of your questions. So grab your cup of coffee, and we hope to see you there.
I love Brewmaster. That's a clever idea. I love that idea, that name. Now, guys, I don't know Deepak as well as I know Michael. And anytime you get a chance to get in a conversation with Michael, you want to take it. He's just a great guy. One of the smartest people I know, and loves to share. So you're going to enjoy that conversation. I hope you will sign up for it. There is the QR code in the screen now. We'll keep that up for a while, even as we head into our other conversation. But Alexis, what is your favorite thing of the Coffee Talk?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I think my favorite thing is that people can come just to learn over like just a casual conversation, kind of like this one. and just hear what our like speakers have to say. So I think that's the best thing. There's no sales pitch. There's nothing like that. It's just all education and fun and talking about all subjects cloud.
There we go. Well, great job pulling that together. And thank you for joining us here today. Have a great rest
Thank
of your
you so
day.
much. All right. Thank you.
You bet. All right, folks, let's press on with the show here, and we're going to get into, let's see, I know there's a topic you don't hear a lot about in the interwebs these days. And of course, it's AI, and of course, it's sarcasm. But I have brought up one of my favorite rackers two of my favorite rackers, but the first one right here, Nirmal Ranganathan, who I've been in meetings with since dawn's early light today, and is going to join us for our conversation here today. VP of Engineering, looks after all things data and AI inside of the office of the CTO. Brilliant guy. And joining us from London today is Amine Badaoui. And Amine, amazing product manager, and is really some deep thinking and thoughts around how to keep AI solutions, what did I say, cost, compliant, and cloud. How do we keep that AI trifecta together in a way that you can have solutions that not only provide great outcome, but also are as compliant as possible, that we take cost into consideration for, and then we're also managing security and all the other aspects we're going to dig into. So without further ado, let's bring up Nirmal and Amine to the conversation. Nirmal and Amine, welcome. So glad that you're here. Amine, you're working late today with us over there in the UK. We appreciate that. How have you been?
Not too bad, Jeff. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Tell us what you do here at Rackspace. I did my best. I didn't even tell them. They were a senior product manager. Said it on your little baseball card. But tell what do you really do around here?
So I'm a senior product manager within our products org here at Rackspace. I've been with Rackspace for 8 to 9 years now, and I focus on AI and HPC workloads in private cloud. That's why.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Glad you're here. Nirmal, we spend a fair amount of time together, which is the benefit to me because I learn a lot from you. But why don't you tell us a little bit about the day in the life of Nirmal here at Rackspace?
Absolutely, Jeff. Thanks for having me on here. It's always a pleasure to be on Cloud Talk Live and talk about all things cloud and AI. So what I do, I focus on engineering, so building products, AI solutions and products that we leverage internally within Rackspace. We also use that to help customers solve business problems. So that's really where I come into play. A lot of experience on the cloud and AI front, and we'll get into some interesting discussions today.
Well, you got a fan in Gert who is calling you out here in the chat. And folks, I would love to encourage you to be like Gert or like Basab, who is commenting there and introducing himself in the chat, especially if you have a question about AI. And specifically, we're going to get into the kind of the nuts and bolts. So Nirmal, when we create these AI solutions, we were just in a meeting earlier today, and we talk about, these things can be costly on a lot of different fronts. There's a lot to consider in that. Why don't you unpack where some of these, I don't want to call them hidden costs because they're there, but how can an AI solution end up being a little more costly than you may have planned for in the onset?
Absolutely. I think where we start off with is an API call, thousands of tokens, is fractions of a cent. That's where we start, and that's cheap and perfect. That's great. I want to leverage, say, thousands of tokens, tens of thousands, maybe 1 million tokens. You're still fine. You're spending $5, $10. You're great. But what if I want to manage or leverage millions of tokens on a daily basis, or forget daily, hourly basis? Then your costs start to skyrocket. There's two aspects that I think people have shifted away from. There's AI models that you are building, and then there's AI models that you're leveraging out of the box. So the cost factors for both are different. The AI models that you're leveraging out of the box, those companies spend millions, sometimes even billions of dollars building and training those models. When you're building models for yourself, obviously you're not going to be billions of dollars, but you're talking millions of dollars in cost and training these models. So there's cost distributed across that life cycle in building and using AI models. I just highlighted a few of them.
Yeah, and there's understanding everything that's involved there to be able to get that understanding of what the cost really could turn into. So, but maybe also talk about how can we rein that in? You know, there's in a lot of cases we can think about maybe the urgency in the work that's being done. How do we kind of pull some of that in? So, Nirmal, why don't you continue that thought? But Amine, follow him right up with how we can think about how we control that somewhat.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to try to approach it from a private cloud or a private AI perspective because that's what I'm focusing on. And I think I should start by basically defining what a private AI is. To me, it refers to an artificial intelligence systems and infrastructure that are implemented basically on-prem data centers rather than on public cloud services. From a cost perspective, in a private AI settings, obviously the capex involved is high. However, if you look at the OpEx side of things, specifically for large-scale deployment or deployments that have heavy AI workload, there is savings to be had. Specifically, if you look at the lack of data transfer between the public cloud providers, the cost of storage, etc., etc. So there is definitely a use case for private AI to try to rein in the cost involved in running such solutions.
Yeah, and I love that you bring up the fact that we can think about where that is going to reside. But Nirmal, I keep referring back to our previous meeting, but we spent a lot of time talking about governance and target operating models as well, because there's a way to think about this that is infrastructure agnostic as well, and should be thinking about this. Why don't you unpack that for a second?
Absolutely. The cost is one element, and governance is another key part. In all these scenarios, you want to start small. Start with focused use cases, and that might take you down a particular path. Totally fine. But I think when you start to think about the broader possibilities, and this is where we go with our view of start with the end in mind and then work backwards. When you do that, then you realize the larger potential of the impact of the AI solutions that they're going to build. If it's internal tooling, if it's coding copilot that's helping my developers, great. If it is an assistant that's helping employees be more productive, great. But I think those are internal use cases that won't have as much impact as these really business transformative use cases. When you think about those, that's really when cost becomes a key element. Governance, compliance, security, all of those start to hit you. Because at this point, you're not just exposing the models internally to your employees, you're actually exposing this to the outside world. So you're having your customers leverage your AI solutions. And that could be anything, right? So that could be a customer service chatbot. It could be part and parcel of a product that you have, whether that's through recommendations or detecting fraud in your transactions, a whole slew of use cases. And that's really where a lot more governance. And what does that mean? Making sure that the model that I'm building and putting out there has aspects of transparency, explainability, auditability, and any decisions that are made can be traced back. And in order to do that externally, performance and cost becomes a key piece, because you're going to handle a lot more transactions, which means performance. In a lot of these scenarios, you need something that's specific for you. I just don't need a general purpose model. You're having a specialized workload, and general purpose models don't solve for that. So it's not just enough to what we really see today with RAG, retrieval augmented generation, is I have a general purpose model, I have my data, I'm applying that data with the model and getting some results. That's great for internal use cases. But as you start to go into external, not really. You're really purpose building a model, which means you're training that with data. There's cost involved there. Security, compliance requirements come into play. Depending on where you're in the world, you have regional laws that you have to comply with. The EU has come up with the EU AI Act. Others are going to come up with that soon. I mean, obviously, EU and UK have the GDPR. From a data compliance perspective, the data is a core asset and element of AI. So when you bring all this together, your challenges compound, and the perspective of how I use AI solutions also start to change. I mean, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think I just want to add a piece about a data sovereignty, especially in our side of the pond. And I'm referring to the legal requirement of having citizens' data and where it's stored. I think that's a very important point to take into consideration as well. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, yes. I think compliance becomes one of the largest driver. Cost performance is one driver, but compliance has more impact because cost performance is really dependent on what solutions you're building, how much impact it has externally. Compliance doesn't matter whether it's a small solution or a large solution. Compliance is always there, depending on your industry and sovereignty requirements. And when you start to get into that, that's where you take a different perspective. Yes, the general purpose models are good. Some of these general purpose are also proprietary models. You don't know what they were trained on. You don't have a track of lineage of the data, provenance of the data. So when it comes back to compliance, that is a key element of it, right? You have to be able to prove how particular decisions with AI are being made. And when you use proprietary models, you don't have that. And that's where it becomes challenging because now if I'm going to build something for myself, there's probably a starting point, but I have it's open source models or other proprietary models. But then I also need to have the flexibility to host and run those anywhere, right? There's going to be sovereignty requirements in place, but I think where we are headed as well is AI is becoming also a national security issue in a lot of cases. So that ties back into what companies and corporates within particular regions are doing. Why is France investing in Mistral so much? Because they feel that yes, the US has the dominance in AI models. Why is China investing in their own AI models? The same scenario. Did France build a Google or Microsoft? No, but they want to build the next AI company. So it is a key national security and technology advantage to go with and build your own models. And again, it's at the national level. It's going to start to get to corporate level soon enough.
Absolutely. Now, when we start to think about these different drivers that would bring somebody to want to use a private AI type of a solution, be it security, be it compliance, be it regulations, what does that actually mean, though? I mean, you did a good job of defining it earlier, but let's talk about the building blocks of a private AI solution. What goes into that, literally, technically? I mean, am I just going to roll out a bunch of servers, or what are we thinking about here?
Well, yeah, the servers are a big part of it. So what we're talking about here is your typical infrastructure, i.e. servers that are GPU enabled. As we all know, that's really the blood of AI. Without GPUs, even though we are seeing more and more CPU inferencing taking the mainstream, but on top of that, you need to think about your storage, what kind of data you have, structured versus unstructured. You need to look at, in general, what you really need to look at is basically the hardware. On top of that, your MLOps or IIOps framework, end to end, which basically has a major impact of any AI project. Most AI projects do fail, not because of the hardware, but literally because of not having the AIOps, MLOps process in place, which makes taking on any projects that is AI related quite a challenge. Nirmal, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered a good view of the stack that's going to be required. And I think the main element, I think some of these are going to be standard requirements. You just need that, right? If you're deploying an AI solution, I need to have that full life cycle from an MLOps perspective, because I'm going to be doing some aspects of training my model or even augmenting, fine tuning an existing model. So in all of those scenarios, I need to have that life cycle. I need to have a place where I can host and inference the model for inferencing. So that is going to be a requirement. And I think the key of all is also having that flexibility and being able to choose the types of models that you want. And then I think the other part, the key piece is hosting them anywhere I want. A lot of these models are going to be on the edge. That is a key consideration. And I mean, obviously, they're in your devices today. You take your Samsung phones or any Google phone, Apple as well. Apple's a little bit behind the game, but they'll get there. But you take a look at any of the Android phones. AI is already there in your phones. There's models that's specifically being developed for use with mobile phones. But again, taking that one step back, edge is definitely going to be a key factor. And in a lot of these scenarios, especially critical industries, right? So when you're thinking about manufacturing, energy, even telcos, pharmaceuticals, I need to be able to have and host these models kind of anywhere. I don't need them in different locations. I need them purpose built. So that, and these are going to be models that are transacting or working with large data, right? So whether that's using them for training or even at inferencing, and that ties back into the cost performance. If I'm running something every second of every day versus I have a few thousand requests per day, right? Huge difference in viewing both of those scenarios.
Well, and it also brings up the fact that rarely are things an either or, this or that. The reality is even in a very established scenario where we're going to use private AI, I mean, normally you already talked about the whole life cycle. That life cycle could live in different areas. Production lives in a private hardened area. You know, maybe the dev environment, the training environment is happening in a public cloud. So it really does take a lot of thought into what that whole life cycle is. And as we were saying earlier, or last meeting sometime, you really need to think about that entire process, and the tech tends to be the thing that happens. I'm not going to say last, but it's not first.
Yeah.
Well, that being said, I mean, having expertise is what, from what we've seen internally within organization, is a challenge. It's not a new kind of ecosystem or a technology, if you will, but there isn't a lot of people out there that have that 10 years, 20 years expertise in the field. So they're far and between, which means that that's something that organization needs to think about outside of even what the platform is who's going to run this, who's going to life cycle it, who's going to, who's going to do the end-to-end kind of process. So that's another thing to look at.
We hear so much about the scarcity of the GPUs, but obviously the real scarcity is measured in who's, just what you said, who's going to run this thing? Who's going to build this thing? That's why Nirmal's so popular.
Exactly.
It's not just his good looks.
Exactly. It takes me about 2 days to get on Nirmal's calendar. But yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I mean, as far as the scarcity of the GPUs, what we're seeing is vendors competing with each other, which is good for us. NVIDIA's just come up with their new chips, and Intel is coming up with new ones. AMD's coming up with new ones. I think long term, long term, I think the scarcity of GPUs will be not as much of a problem as it is now. However, from what I'm hearing on the field is that the networking is becoming a scarce resource too, especially if you're talking about InfiniBand for private cloud setup. So yes, it's an interesting time to be involved in this.
Absolutely. So obviously this is an offering that we have here at Rackspace in helping companies, not just with AI at large, but with the ability then to deploy AI in a private construct, without being overly salesy, maybe a little salesy. What does that offering look like, Amine?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm going to stay completely away from a sales pitch. Rackspace has a whole plethora of services and infrastructure that we can offer to our customers from an AI perspective. I think people are fully aware of our FAIR framework, which has 3 main services that help our customers, which I think is very, very important, more important than the infrastructure itself. But from an infrastructure perspective, we have launched AI Anywhere, which tags very well to what Nirmal was saying about edge use cases. AI Anywhere is a fully capable AI platform that can be deployed closer to the customers. I am talking about colo places or third-party data centers, and we're actively working on AI business, which can be deployed within Rackspace DCs. Within these 2 platforms, we can tackle all use cases, and I'm referring to inferencing use cases, fine-tuning use cases, and even training use cases. So we are building our portfolio very nicely.
Yeah, and Jeff, if I want to
Yeah.
kind of wrap this whole thing, right? You look at it, mom and pop shops, all they need is a ChatGPT license, right?
Yeah.
And
Easy.
go at it. You don't need anything more. On the other spectrum, I forget what the exact name is, or the AI solution that Tesla is building, right? That's on the other spectrum. That's a huge solution that's used for training all the autonomous vehicles. So there's a huge spectrum of use cases and scenarios. And I think what we're getting at is really enabling the possibilities across that spectrum. So again, lightweight use cases, again, moving from mom and pop app developers, mostly they just need an AI, right? Or an API to go use AI for either some generation or some augmentation of their conversational interfaces. To again, we go down that core industry use cases. I mentioned Tesla from an automotive perspective, but anything that requires design and deeper analysis, you need a large volume of compute power. And when you have that consistent large volume of compute power, that's when the scales tip over. So having that options, understanding the need, right? That's why I said, have that vision in mind, start with where you're going to end, and then work backwards. And that working backwards, you might start small and then move into the larger needs.
Yep, I like it. All right, you guys, one last question for each of you. You have 30 seconds to answer it. And what is your favorite AI use case that you've heard of recently? How are you seeing AI make a difference in the world today? Nirmal, you're up first. 30 seconds.
Personal use case, I'll go with the personal one, just keep it light. Removing people from the background in photos. Use it every day now. And that's a nice one to have. It's a nice personal touch. I think if you look at businesses, there are similar use cases with both images and videos, especially in the media and entertainment industry. There is a huge opportunity for AI.
Incredible. Yep, agreed. Amine.
Life changing. It has to be disease detection. To be honest with you, we're having conversations with the healthcare organizations, and they're working towards, implementing something that will look at a picture of some sort, or and automatically decide if that person has a disease of some sort or not. I think that is life changing. To be honest with you. There's a lot of use cases. Personally, this is my personal opinion. In the next 10 years, I think the world will be a different place because of that. That's why I truly believe that.
I couldn't agree more. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for being a part of the program today. A special one for us here on a Thursday in the middle of the day, or end of the day if you're in the UK like Amine is. Well, thank you so much again for being here and helping to unpack the topic. Gents, I'll see you in meetings, I'm sure, throughout the rest of the day. Everyone, I want to thank you also for being around today. We have a special episode coming up. Oh, they're all special episodes. Next week, we're not up here on Tuesday. We're up here on Monday. Monday's Earth Day. I think I'm going to be outside for that episode. We'll see if I can pull off the tech. But until then, everyone, I want to thank you for spending this past half hour with us. My name is Jeff DeVerter. I'm the Chief Technology Evangelist here at Rackspace Technology, your host here at Cloud Talk Live. And don't forget to go out and subscribe to the podcast. Let's be best friends over on the LinkedIn. And until next time, I'll see you at the next episode of Cloud Talk Live.